second time, and I call the honourable member for Calwell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I want to join with my Labor parliamentary colleagues and oppose the changes to the Australian Citizenship Legislation Amendment strengthening the requirements for Australian citizenship and other measures Bill 2017. Deputy Speaker, I do so because the government's proposed changes, quite simply as far as I'm concerned, are unwarranted, and I don't believe that there is any evidence-based reason for changes to the Citizenship Act. Now, these changes stand to, on the contrary, undo all the great work we as a country have done to date to create the sort of social cohesion that has resulted in a successful contemporary multicultural Australian society. These changes, Deputy Speaker, are nothing short of divisive, and as they appear to have been solely designed to deliberately exclude people, not to include them, it's a bill about exclusion, not inclusion. These changes present a calculated and harsh hurdle to Australian citizenship, one, Deputy Speaker, that has never been attempted by any other government. It's a Little Australia bill that bucks the visionary aspiration of Australia's nation-building project. Deputy Speaker, I have the opportunity to attend many citizenship ceremonies in my electorate of Calwell. Having an electorate that has the highest intake of refugees historically and more recently the highest intake from Syria and Iraq, and a very large multicultural community made up of established migrants and second and third generation migrants, this means that I get the opportunity, and I have had the opportunity, of seeing thousands of locals, migrants and refugees take up with great pride their Australian citizenship. Australian citizenship ceremonies in my electorate are incredibly important family and community occasions, and they're always filled with excitement, with joy and with pride. And I personally really enjoy attending citizenship ceremonies. Each time they bring back precious memories for me personally, as it reminds me of my own experience when I became an Australian citizen alongside my parents. Deputy Speaker, at our local citizenship ceremonies, I see so many of my constituents embarking on what they see as a new chapter in their life here in Australia. I see their pride and the sense of achievement from the moment I shake their hand and offer them the Australian flag that they so proudly hold, embrace and wave while they pledge allegiance to their new home when they sing our national anthem for the first time. Each new citizen, Deputy Speaker, thanks me, their federal member, for the honour we as Australia have bestowed on them by allowing them to become citizens and welcoming them as equals to our multicultural family. They are indeed grateful, they're excited, and many of them who have come from war-torn countries see this moment of citizenship as an anchor to a safe place of safety, stability and egalitarianism. Each and every time our newly minted Australian citizens look forward to participating in our democratic process. In fact, I'm astounded as to how quick they are to fill out their AEC form so they can get on the roll. And nothing is more moving, Deputy Speaker, than the children who stand next to the parents who I see reflected in their presence the future of this country. Now, throughout this debate, Deputy Speaker, I've thought about my own family, the people I grew up with, and indeed my constituents more broadly. I think about how demeaning it would be to be excluded from attaining citizenship because you can't get to level IELT 6 of the standard English test, or how frustrating it would be to have to be told that you have to wait for a longer period of time now because the government has arbitrarily decided that you need more years to prove yourself. I think about the people who will never overcome this insurmountable hurdle proposed by this legislation. And I actually genuinely do wonder, what is this all about? Now, Deputy Speaker, the preamble to the Australian Citizenship Act of 2007 states, and I quote, "Citizenship is a common bond that unites all Australians." Citizenship is not only a legal contract, Deputy Speaker, it's also of enormous symbolic significance that indeed all of us are united and equal as Australians. Citizenship should not be reserved exclusively for those who happen to speak university-level English, while those of us who don't are to be relegated to some purgatory of Australian citizenship. Deputy Speaker, I want to refer to the Federation of Ethnic Community Councils of Australia's submission to the Senate inquiry into the citizenship changes, where they state that, and I quote, "This bill will dramatically change the rules determining qualification for Australian citizenship." Now, from my own personal experience and also from the feedback I've received from the people in my electorate, this bill, which purports to expedite integration because of the level of English it imposes and somehow protects our Australian values, cultures and even our national security, this bill will actually be doing the opposite. It will compromise the multicultural society that millions of migrants have worked so hard to build over the decades. And, Deputy Speaker, this is not a spurious view held by myself or my Labor colleagues. It's the view of people who have skin in the game on the issue of integration. The migrant communities across this country and in my own electorate, from the English, the Dutch, the Italians, the Greeks, the Turks, the Yugoslavs, in fact, all of Arthur Calwell's new Australians, who have come from generations of migrants whose biggest contribution to this nation as citizens was to build this country. And, Deputy Speaker, they did it without university-level English. The thousands of young post-war migrants, many who worked on the iconic Snowy Mountain scheme, my father-in-law included. In fact, many of them built their lives and their fortunes with very little English at all. Now, as a matter of fact, Deputy Speaker, under this bill, I've thought about this. My parents would never have become Australian citizens, never. They had little education in Greece, came to Australia as adults with a young family. They worked very hard, day and night, and did not have the capacity to learn English. However, they built a life for their family, they bought property, they educated both their daughters to university level, and in fact one of them just ended up being in this place as a federal member of parliament. But, Deputy Speaker, God only knows where all that lifelong contribution would have gone had they been denied Australian citizenship. Maybe they would have been forced to go back to where they came from, as a former member of this House infamously once said. Australia, Deputy Speaker, has managed to get along with the process of nation building and integration, and we've done it with many of us speaking a whole variation of English, whether it's mother tongue English, university level English, basic English, conversational English. In fact, Deputy Speaker, the Greek Australians have even developed their own idiom here in Australia, and we call it Greeklish. And it's actually quite funny but reflective of the reality of living in Australia. Now, so my point is that Australians have effectively gotten along quite fine, thank you very much, and have been able to communicate and collaborate with each other with whatever English level they have available to them. And you know what, Deputy Speaker? Their commitment to Australia has been all the better for it. I believe we are the most successful multicultural society in the world, and even our Prime Minister used to say that once upon a time. But we didn't become this by accident, nor by punitive measures. The truth is that access to Australian citizenship has been fundamental to developing an inclusive and cohesive society. Yet our own Prime Minister seems to have had a change of mind on this issue. Perhaps he's been convinced otherwise by the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. In fact, the Prime Minister is now saying that this bill, and I quote, will ensure that many people who have not learnt English or had not been encouraged to learn English will do so. And so you know what we're doing, he says? We're doing them a big favour. Well, leaving aside the somewhat patronising undertone, this is a very narrow and short-sighted prerequisite for citizenship, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, I want to make one thing clear, Deputy Speaker. In opposing this bill, I am not for a minute suggesting that people who want to become citizens of Australia or who want to live here and become integrated in our community should not learn English. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I do believe that being able to speak the English language is important to getting around to belonging and to integrating. I really do. Our settlement services, Deputy Speaker, do a great job in providing English language classes to new migrants who wanted to become citizens. Historically, we've provided English language classes and helped people learn the English language since the days of Australia's first immigration minister, Arthur Calwell. The issue here is not learning the English language. The issue here is the standard of English, the IELT Level 6 University English that's being used to decide whether you can become an Australian citizen or not. That's the issue. Now, the government appears to want to raise the bar so high that in doing so, it will make citizenship insurmountable for many hard-working people, including many in my electorate. Deputy Speaker, the Refugee Council of Australia has said about this bill, and I quote, that this bill will disproportionately affect refugees and it would fundamentally alter the nature of Australian citizenship. The proposals in the bill would effectively convert citizenship policy from being a tool of inclusion to a tool of exclusion. So for those people in my electorate, Deputy Speaker, who have already been waiting for citizenship to come through, these changes also propose another hurdle. The government now wants them to wait another 3 years or so to get citizenship, causing further uncertainty and angst. The government, of course, will argue that new migrants and refugees need to work harder to integrate. They need to wait longer and learn not only to speak English, but to speak university-level English before they are allowed to become citizens. Yet to the people of my electorate, especially the ones born overseas, becoming an Australian citizen was instrumental and fundamental to their sense of belonging. The people in my electorate are proof that you don't need university-level English to become a good Australian. The people of Calwell and their children are proof that we shouldn't use Australian citizenship as a tool to exclude people, nor to reaffirm our values. Our values are reaffirmed in the daily lives of my constituents. I believe, Deputy Speaker, that FECA is right when it suggests that this bill will create a permanent underclass of Australian residents who will be denied the rights and opportunities of being welcomed and included as Australian citizens. These changes, if they pass this House and are enacted, are set to exclude a whole cohort of people because of a language test that even many Australian-born citizens would find difficult to successfully complete. And this is a view shared by the Australian Human Rights Commission, who said, and I quote, "Many Australian-born citizens would not possess a written or spoken command of English equivalent to this standard." Deputy Speaker, I want to thank all the civil society organisations such as FECA, the many people in my electorate and others who are standing up and defending our rights, because, quite frankly, I don't think the government is. Deputy Speaker, I don't think that this is just a case of snobbery. I don't even think it's a case of elitism, although it has been referred as such. I think this is blatant racism. Harsh, but as far as I'm concerned, this is blatant racism by a government that stands to do one thing, and that is to divide the Australian community. So I'll finish with where I start. It leaves me to continue to ask the question that a lot of people in the Australian community are asking. What really is the point of these proposed changes? What is the point of this legislation? It doesn't add to our social cohesion. In fact, it's the antithesis of this. These changes will compromise our multicultural society. These changes take away the egalitarian nature of the Aussie way of life and thinking. These changes are detrimental and dangerous to a safe and cohesive Australian society. And, Deputy Speaker, this is not the way a progressive, forward-thinking country behaves in a global community.